Hi everyone, welcome to this video on the vaccines lesson in the Human Body Part 2 scheme of work. This is a really nice lesson to teach, I think. It's really clear what you want students to be able to do by the end of it, which is to essentially describe the process by which a person becomes immune after vaccination in full. It's an example I often use when I'm talking to people about how our curriculum is structured. How is this lesson different to a Key Stage 4 lesson on vaccines? In many ways it's not that different because we know in the GCSE students will often be asked to describe this process, and this lesson sets them up really well for that. The way it's taken further at GCSE is for students to kind of look at this with a more abstract representation. So rather than just having pictures, as we're going to talk about today, in Key Stage 3 and look at it qualitatively, they might be given some data, those antibody graphs over time, and yeah, they might be asked to kind of relate it to some concrete examples to do with COVID or something like that. And again, I think that really nicely illustrates what our curriculum is aiming for. At Key Stage 3, we want to build the big ideas and we want to give them this qualitative picture of how everything works and fits together, so that at Key Stage 4 they can apply that and look at it through the lens of mathematics and data and measurements and so on. Anyway, so where we want to get them to at the end of the lesson is to be able to essentially answer that 3, 4, 5 mark question that they quite often get in the GCSE. But in short, we want them to be able to write fluently about vaccines. So how do I teach this? Well, I start with something that they will all be familiar with, either because they remember it themselves, maybe they've had baby brothers and sisters who they've taken to the GP. This idea that you go to the doctors or someone comes into school and they get a needle in their arm. What's happening there? So that's a concrete experience they're all familiar with. We can now say, well, okay, we can guide what's happening here with some science. And again, we're reinforcing this idea that all communicable diseases. Now I'm second guessing myself. Anyway, communicable diseases are generally caused by pathogens. This is the big idea. They're not caused by changes inside the body. They're caused by something entering our body. So what we do with the vaccine is kind of do a fake pathogen, a dead or weakened or inactive version of the virus or whatever other pathogen it is. So we can show that this is going on. The way I illustrated this with my class at Orchard Park is I made it clear that there was no DNA inside here or RNA or God knows what else, no genetic material. So this virus can get in. Again, I don't know if I've got that right, but the idea that I shared with them is that it's got the antigen. That's the main thing. It's got the antigen, but it's not going to invade the host cells and replicate and cause loads of problems. So I don't know whether the way I explained it is right, but the idea that you really need to get across is that the antigen is there. Because what that allows the body to do is produce antibodies that are specific to that antigen. So this is what I'm going to emphasize to students is, okay, and I've probably recapped this before I've gone into my explanation, but what are the ways in which the immune system or white blood cells can respond? One is they can engulf it, one is they produce antitoxins, one is they produce antibodies. So in this case, this is why the antigens in the dead or weakened version are so important, because it stimulates the white blood cells to produce antibodies which bind to the antigens. And then what you can tell them is that after that we have memory cells, again, you can use more sophisticated language like lymphocytes and stuff if you wish. But the point that I want to stress to my Key Stage 3 students is that what these memory cells do, and these are just more white blood cells, is that they remember, we're personifying a little bit there, but they can rapidly produce these specific antibodies for that antigen. So then I'm going to go back to then another concrete experience. So let's say you've been vaccinated against COVID, and then someone with COVID coughs. And again, we're coming back to this big idea. We're trying to shape all the way that they view their experience. Whenever someone coughs at you, what's happening is they are transmitting this pathogen into your body. And this is the real deal. So I've drawn some genetic material inside here to say, this is not a game. This is not a drill anymore. This virus that's now got into your body because someone coughed on you because they were infected, this is going to try and get into your cells, take over the host cells, replicate, and so on. But because you've got these memory cells, what's happening is very, very quickly, and I've emphasized that by putting rapid production there, very, very quickly, your memory cells produce the specific antibodies, they bind to the antigens, and that pathogen, that virus in this case, is rendered harmless. And then the word we use to describe that is that this person is immune, and that's a really important word that they need to use. And again, there may be some misconceptions here that if you're immune to a disease, well, you can never catch it, or never, the pathogen can't get in the first place. So a good example here is chickenpox. People have this idea that, okay, if they've had chickenpox, well, then the chickenpox virus is never going to get in to their body. It's not that it doesn't get in, it's the fact that when it does get in, your memory cells know what to do, they produce the antibodies, they make it harmless. So that's a really, really important idea to emphasize to students. In the next video, we'll look at herd immunity.